Hello and welcome to the Tricolore Pridecast, your podcast on all things Yokohama F Marinos. My name is Jamie and I'll be joined by Stuart and Tony as we run through the latest news and stories at the Nissan Stadium. Good morning, gents, or good evening I should say, in your own time. Stuart, how are you this week?
Fantastic, yeah, doing well. Looking forward to talking about all the news. I didn't think we'd have much to talk about, but a week is a long time in being a supporter of Marinos.
Yeah, it's been an action-packed week, definitely. And Tony, yourself, how are you?
Yes, all good over here. Yeah, had a busy week, but a good one, and a few surprises, haven't we, this week? So looking forward to talking about it.
Indeed. And we're going to start off with another surprise for you, gents, because I am going to, as is my wont, doorstep you a little bit here with a little bit of trivia. I'll keep track of this as we progress through the podcast and the seasons, and come back to you at the end of the year. I'm going to start off with a nice easy one for you. Who scored the first goal of the 2021 Yokohama F Marinos season? Who scored the first goal? Any guesses?
I'm guessing Marcos Jr.
Oh, that's a good guess. 2021 first game. Wasn't Gamba was 2020 first game. I'm going to go for Maeda.
1-0 to Tony. There you go. The law of averages, Tony, I was going to say. You could go with the law of averages there, and it was going to be Daisen Maeda. So yes, correct. Sanfrecce Hiroshima at home. A 3-3 tie. And yep, the scorer was Daisen Maeda. So at that point, you would have been glad to hear that we were already 2-0 down after 30 minutes. But yes, Daisen Maeda scored the first goal of the season, and he was assisted by Iwata. So I'll press on, gents. I think we've still got to cover the remainder of the January transfer window. Stuart, I believe you're going to be able to tie that off for us and round it all up, yeah?
Yes. So to continue where we left off in the last show, with the transfers starting at January 5th. So on the 5th of January, it was announced that 20-year-old Yokosuka Marinos Academy and youth defender Ko Ikeda, who was currently on loan to Sanuki, will return to Marinos. Also on that day, they announced that the club has renewed the contract with Yuta Koike. So on January 5th, Marinos announced Yokosuka's own 21-year-old forward Yushi Yamaya, who is currently on loan to Kagoshima, will join Yokohama FC on loan until January the 31st, 2023. Let's hope he comes back. After that, on the 6th of January again, Marinos announced that the club had renewed its contract with Ken Matsubara. We're very happy to see him coming back. So the next day, on the January 7th, the club announced that the 22-year-old defender Taiga Nishiyama joined Yokohama FC. So he made 49 appearances for Aomori and probably wanted to get back home. Also on January 7th, we were relieved that former Yokohama FC goalkeeper Yohei Takuoka, top goalkeeper, had renewed the contract with the club. Also, that the club has announced an extended loan period for 19-year-old forward Takumi Tsukui, who's on loan to Aomori until January 31st, 2023. Marinos announced that 19-year-old defender Shunsuke Hirai joined Aomori on loan until January the 31st, 2023. Also later in the day, the final announcement was that Jun Amano will join Ulsan Hyundai FC on loan until December 31st, 2022. We hope he does well there and seems to be enjoying his life there so far. On January the 8th was the last announcement, we thought, where Marinos announced that the contract with Teruhito Nakagawa was renewed. So that's the final transfers that we saw. So, gentlemen, what do you think about Takoka, Nakagawa, and Koike being the last ones to sign?
I'm pleased that Koike is signed again. He's started off, we weren't too sure about him, I think, but he's really grown into the squad, and he's pretty well signed himself off as a starting player now. So, and he looked really good toward, in the last part of last year. He was really contributing with some goals and some great assists. So really happy with him coming in again.
Yeah, similarly, I really like Koike. I think he's a really dynamic player. Also kind of happy to see Matsubara sign on again for another season. But yeah, I think Koike's a really good player for us. In relation to Nakagawa, you mentioned, Stuart, it is quite late on in the transfer window for him to be re-signing, and I think it's always you're always looking for that 2019 for him with him. I'm wondering at this point just now if we're just going to accept that may be, the outlier, the anomaly in his career, as opposed to looking for him to return to that form and just take what we can get from him in a season by season basis. But if he can recapture half of that for him, then we're on to a winner with him this season.
Yeah, I feel sometimes that players step up when they're needed, like. And maybe they lose a little bit of confidence if there's other goal scorers kind of doing the job. So I like last year he had quite a long spell out with injury and was quite unlucky with his injuries. But I wouldn't say he's always been a kind of a injury prone player. But I do remember that he came on. When he first joined the club, he came on in a wheelchair for the first introduction to the fans. So he took a while to actually get back on his feet initially when he joined Marinos. But as you say, yeah, it'd be fantastic if he was in form, and he kind of him and Marcos got that spark again. I think Marcos again, like last year, he just really, was just, I wouldn't say doing the minimum, but he was just he wasn't such an outstanding player as the previous year. But yeah, I'd like to see Nakagawa again in form.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point around Marcos. He sort of he cut for me quite a frustrated figure at points last year. I don't know if it was his body language or but kind of looking at him, it seemed to me as if he was a bit frustrated with the team, and I think maybe that's maybe as it was as the manager leaving halfway through. It could be anything, but I was pleasantly surprised to see him re-sign, because I kind of had a feeling that he maybe wouldn't. So yeah, I agree. I think they two can connect really well, and it'll be good chemistry. And I would certainly like to see a little bit more from both of them this season.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised with Marcos as well. I thought he might have been one of a few players that had probably decided that, with Postecoglou gone, that their time or their era, their period at Marinos was also up. But he, I remember Muscat subbed him off kind of early in a couple of matches, and he didn't look very happy at all on the bench. So I thought that maybe that was a sign that he was perhaps not going to hang around. Yeah, and Nakagawa, it was a funny announcement. Because we went through the whole thing in the previous window, the August window, where he was rumoured to be going to Kobe to be one of several Furuhashi replacements. And then there was a big fanfare about him saying that he wants to stay with Marinos because he loves Marinos, etc. So I kind of wasn't surprised at all that he signed on. I suppose it was just maybe one of those announcements that they have to make at the start of the year.
Yeah, I was saying before, I wondered if his signing at the very end was his kind of good luck thing, because he always comes on last to the huddle. He's always like 30 seconds later than the rest of the players, and I wonder whether that's his kind of lucky charm to wait until the very last. But also he had that kind of relationship with Nissan, and he was promised a new car or something in the previous year if he could match his goal totals, and he has the number 23 Nissan number. So I wonder if he's on a special deal with Nissan at all, but I don't know about that. But I think we should get on to the big news this transfer season. We were just saying in the last podcast that wow, isn't it fantastic that Thiago signed on again, and we were really relieved that he signed on again, and then we jinxed it because almost immediately we said that the rumours came around that he was to sign with New York FC, and then in the press that was pretty well discussed, and then the club put out the fairly strange announcement that he was negotiating with a foreign club, and that Eduardo from Tosu had been signed as his replacement. So that has all come in the last almost the last week since we talked.
Yeah, Stuart, and it's honestly, I'm kind of lost for words still, to be honest with you. It was so quick. If you recall, we're in the group chat, and I kind of wake up sometimes to this sort of news, which can be pleasant and make a good day or ruin your day before it starts. And I was totally blindsided by this one. I never saw it coming. He renewed, as we mentioned last week. I think it was on the 28th of December, and thank God he did, obviously, because it's guaranteed the club a pretty substantial transfer fee. I think it's the biggest we've ever received, actually. But you missed a key word, Stuart, from the club that he's going to, which is New York City FC, because I think it's very important to mention, of course, that they are a cousin, I think you would call it, or in some capacity that have an existing relationship with Yokohama F Marinos, and obviously that's played into other factors as well across the City football group. But I mentioned in last week's podcast that for me, I think he's the best central defender in the league, and he was, I should say, and probably our most important player in a lot of ways, and this is quite staggering. Kudos to the club for immediately turning around and seeking a replacement in Eduardo, who, from what I've seen of him, is certainly I've seen more of him at Kawasaki, but a big, strong, physical central defender who seems capable and seems to have performed well wherever he's been in the league. But yeah, staggered, I think, is the best way to put it.
It was definitely a rude awakening that morning when I saw the news come through. I thought we'd done with all our transfer news for the year, especially, particularly the outgoings. I thought we might have had one or two incomings, and we were semi-expecting Anderson Lopez to come in from Wuhan. I said last week that we can't do Ange Ball without Thiago, and I was probably a bit hyperbolic and overstating it, but we definitely played a lot better when Thiago's in the team. So it was a pretty big blow. I suppose we'll have to see. Hopefully Eduardo can come in and perform a similar role. To be honest, I haven't seen a lot of him. I don't know the circumstances I can't recall the circumstances of why he left Kawasaki, but I think he was going to go to Gamba, I think, but he at the last minute he stayed on with Sagan Tosu. So hopefully it's not too much of a drop in quality, and he can perform a very similar role to Thiago. I think I read also that I think New York City FC had also been after him for a season or two, and we'd rejected them. So whatever machinations were going on over there, and because they got rid of another centre back not long ago, probably with the expectation that Thiago was coming in. So Yeah, well, at least we'll get a bit of money shuffled around the City Group into our bank account this time.
I think you guys would maybe be able to put a figure in dollars on this better than I would. I think the fee is around 300 million yen. Stuart, is that right?
Yes, I think it was initially rumoured to be 500, but 300 million.
I mean, it's a lot of money. It's for a guy who signed a contract 6 weeks ago. That's a significant amount of money for us, and obviously it's allowed the club to turn around, as you say, and immediately sign that replacement, and also bring in Anderson Lopez. Tony, I hadn't realised. I mean, I'd seen a rumour about a month ago, but I hadn't realised that Anderson Lopez had sort of been viewed as a likely outcome. Do you know anything about him, or do either of you know anything about his previous career?
I did see him a few times when he was playing for Sapporo, and he seemed okay, but I think amongst other J-League watchers, he didn't really stand out as a super impressive player. I wouldn't, maybe not along the lines of just another Brazilian J-League player, as maybe Alan Gibson might say, but of course I think his most famous highlight in the J-League is when he jumped the banners and fell down into the gutter, into the very, very deep gutters around Sapporo Stadium. So it would be a bit nicer if he had some more goal-oriented, actual goal-scoring feat-oriented highlights than the celebration. Yeah, there'd been a few stories in the press, just I suppose they would have been rumours, but I suppose the way rumours work in Japan, particularly with certain publications, it seems that if once it's sort of in the paper, once it's in a certain paper or two, then it looks like it's in the works. So yeah, I think with the ACL this year, we needed as many bodies as we can. So hopefully he can provide something on. I'm assuming either up front or on one of the wings, one of the either Maeda or Nakagawa's side of up front there.
Yeah, I do remember him with Sapporo, and if you look at, there's one highlight where he was playing with us, and he was really fast compared to our players, and so it was. I didn't know that he'd gone to China, and there was another rumor going around, and that Eric might be coming back to Marinos, and then that was kind of said, well, Eric's Japanese working visa had expired, but Anderson Lopez had gone to China more recently, so he still had an open visa to work in Japan, so that made it easier for him to come back, and I think so that means that he can come, I guess, directly back and start training with the team, whereas Eric would be in the current Corona immigration limbo situation, where even if he did want to come back, he probably couldn't get back until the government changes the regulations. So I think it'd be very difficult now to get players to actually come in, to get new bodies coming into Japan. So I think it's a little bit of a weird situation that we're in at the moment, because as I say, with the immigration situation, players moving within Japan is a lot more likely than new players coming in, whereas like a Thiago leaving will have no problems to go to New York and get settled in there. But for Thiago himself, I think maybe situation is a little bit different now. As we say, with the Corona situation here, and it may be more attractive to him and his family to go to America, to be able to travel back more easily to Brazil, even though it's a long way. But just to live in New York would be, I think a lot of us would like to spend a couple of years living in New York. So I don't blame him for taking the opportunity. And you kind of wonder, though, with this is probably the first inter City Football Group transfer that we've had. And if you think about how the money would work, for City Group, if they wanted to put money into Marinos, then this is definitely a way to do it, to transfer money from America to Japan with transfer fees. And they're getting a very good player in exchange. But if it had been another club, then maybe Thiago could have gone earlier, and we'd have no transfer fee in that case, as we mentioned. So you wonder how the money flows in these cases.
Yeah, sure. And I think you're speaking very practically there, and it makes a lot of sense around Thiago's family perhaps wanting to live in New York, because of it has occurred to me that with the rise in the quality in MLS in the past few years, and it really establishing itself as a really viable league for players to go, how attractive would it be for guys who want to go and live in LA or go live in New York and play professional football? And I think that's a good point. Just to mention as well, earlier you mentioned about Eric, and I noted yesterday, and actually I was going to bring that up as part of the news, because Changchun Yatai, his current team, have signed another forward, a Polish forward called Eric, funnily enough with the exact same spelling. It's looking as if he's going to have to leave, and that's, if it is, as a result of just logistics and it being easier for Anderson Lopez to get back in, then that would be really sad, because Eric was a terrific player for us, and I would have liked to see him back in the Tricolore. Yourself, Tony?
He's the number one player that I've been wanting back since he left. I mean, there was a bit of a kerfuffle with the way he left. I think we didn't send the fax in time or something like that. So hopefully, maybe it didn't work out this time, but maybe if things can work out for the August window, we might be able to get him back then. That would be, I think that'll be the thing that I'll be hoping for next. He was just he was great. He just tore up the left-hand side. Oh no, the right-hand side. I think we had Mateus on the left-hand side in 2019, and Eriki was going up the right there, where he is now. I think he's such a fast, dynamic player. He's got a great finish on him. So if we can get him back, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll just need to wait until next season now for any chance of that. So yeah, I think that. What do you think? Should that round up the January transfer window? I can't really see. In fact, the winter transfer window, I can't really see any more comings and goings. Although I would have said the same thing last week. But with that in mind, can I ask you both, how would you rate the transfer window overall, based on your current knowledge of the players we've brought in and the re-signings? And if I could ask you even to put a number on it, what would you give it out of 10?
So I would say 6.5. Now, the reason for that is under 5 would be terrible, but still we did lose Daizen, so that really is a big loss. Now we've lost Thiago, so we're down there. The points to make it up to 6.5 are the speed in which we replaced Thiago with Eduardo, and he looks to be a good player. And I do actually I don't remember players from other clubs so much, but for both Eduardo and Anderson Lopez, I do remember them. So I feel that they must have impressed me as opponents in the past. The other collection of players we've got, I think fairly serviceable, but I think it's very difficult to judge at this point, because in the past, we were going bananas about players that were coming in from Brazil, and then they didn't have such a good season, and then there were unknown players that came in that really did well. I don't think we really were that impressed that Daizen and Ado were coming. It's like, oh yeah, they've been around a little bit. They haven't shown their full potential. But yeah, they did well. So I'm going to say 6.5. How about you, Tony?
Yeah, look, I think my gut reaction is that I'm a bit underwhelmed. I'm going to put it around about a 6. I don't want to prejudge any of the players that have come in, so I'm happy to let them play the season, and hopefully they'll be able to do a job for us. But just for a team that we were a clear second last season, but there was a clear gap between us and first. I'm just a bit worried that we don't seem to be ambitious, and we're not looking like we really want to try and bridge that gap between second and first. There's a lot of good work being done by teams below us, like Reds. I think they're going to have a very good season this season. Rodriguez has been doing really well with them. They've really they've gone through kind of a similar rebuild to what Ange put us through in 2018, 2019. So I don't think we've done enough to keep pushing towards first place. But maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe Nishimura, for example, will be a great replacement for Daisen. Yeah, that's probably maybe Nakagawa can get back. He was on the way back towards his better form last season, even if he wasn't quite there. But hopefully that progress can continue. So a bit underwhelmed, and we're going to have a heavy schedule with ACL and compressed year with the World Cup at the end of the year. So, yeah, I'm happy to let it play out and see what happens, but I'm a bit worried, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think I would give it a bit of a lower score, though. Gents, I think I'd probably be shooting more for the 4s, or potentially even the 3s, because looking at it on paper, we've lost the best defender and our best striker. And yes, the club have made efforts to replace them, but to the point you made, Tony, it was never about, for me, getting into this transfer window, it was about trying to kind of bridge that gap to first place. And it was, in my opinion, a pretty substantial gap last season. Despite losing 3 or 4 players over the course of the year, Kawasaki just keep motoring and keep powering on. And, I think the onus is really on us to go out and try and show that intent and bridge that gap. But you don't do that by selling your best central defender 2 weeks before the season starts. And yes, there may be other factors and considerations in there, and maybe the fee was too big to knock back. But I think I'm happy with the players that returned, as we mentioned last week. It's been good to get Marcos back and a few of the other Brazilian guys amongst the nucleus of the squad. But both in terms of timing and in terms of the overall efforts to try and bridge that gap to first, I don't think it's been a particularly strong transfer window. And I think, to your point as well, Tony, I think the league is going to be tough this year. Not just Reds, as you mentioned quite rightly, but I think Kobe as well have signed. We spoke about earlier on the requirement potentially to sign more internal transfers as a result of legislation around visas and people entering the country in Japan. I think Kobe have managed that about as well as anyone in the past year or so by signing premier Japanese international players from overseas, and using that Furuhashi money on top of the other money they've got to try and build up a squad. So yeah, I think we're in for a tough fight this year, and as it is, I don't really know how well we have equipped ourselves for that fight this transfer window. But as you both said, time will tell, and we could be sitting here in March or April 10 points clear, when Nishimura had 12 goals in 10 games. Who knows. But if it's okay with yourselves, I think we should perhaps move on to some of the other news and finish off the transfer window, because I believe there was a training match this week. Now, this may just be an update, because I don't think anyone has seen it. But there was and for those who aren't familiar, it's something I've rarely seen outside of Japan. But there was a training match played against Sanfrecce Hiroshima, and it was, I think I might say it's 3 30-minute halves, or 3 30-minute thirds, I should say. The score finished 2-2, 0-1 and 0-0 of those three games, making a total score of 3-2 to Sanfrecce Hiroshima, with Marcos scoring both goals. So if I could ask yourself, Stuart, what do you know of that game? I'm guessing you haven't seen any highlights, because as far as I know, there aren't any. But in your experience of watching those sort of games that are broken up into three, in fact, I'm just reading it, is it 45 times 3? Sorry, so it was 3 45 minutes. So yeah, have you been to any of those games before? And generally, what's it like watching football for that length of time?
Yeah, I think we used to go and see those matches at Marinos Town, and that was in during the season, where they would schedule a friendly against a local club. Sometimes it was against a kind of a university club, sometimes against Kawasaki or some other nearby club, and they would play the 3 times 45 minutes. And during that time, they're aiming to rotate all the players, like even the goalkeepers. So they would have, maybe 3 goalkeepers, and like everybody would get a chance. And there, so I think the Hiroshima one, it would be nice to win that one. I think Kawasaki had a fantastic match against somebody. Does anybody recall who it was? They scored a lot of goals the other day, which is pretty scary. But we had that match, which was on the 5th, and then before that, actually on the 2nd, there was a match against Yamagata, same format, and that was 2-2. So in that match, Leo Sierra and Takuma Nishimura scored. So it's nice to see that Nishimura scored in his match. So I don't think there's much we can really comment about it without actually seeing it. But we haven't won any of our training matches so far. So maybe that's the big takeaway.
Yeah, from what I've seen of the training matches, we tend to we go through the whole squad in the first 2 periods, and then usually the third part is there's a whole lot of trainees and B teamers, and pretty well all the main players are all subbed off by that time. So I think we actually popped the losing goal in that 3rd period against Sanfrecce. So hopefully that was the case, that we just had all the trainees on the pitch at that time. The Montedio Yamagata game was good to see us play against them, against our old assistant coach Pete Klomoski, and one of our old learnees who's now become a permanent member at Yamagata. Yamada Kota was one of the scorers for Montedio, so I'm glad he's doing well, and I hope that they're up in J1 next year. It'll be nice to see another team with a few Marinos connections in J1.
Indeed, yeah. So we'll keep you updated on those training matches as they take place over the coming weeks, and hope improvement would be good as well. So I'll move on just to mention a couple of news pieces related to the club, although in the instance of both as former players. Tony, you and I last week chose our favourite ever players for a time watching Yokohama F Marinos. I mentioned Seitaro Tomisawa, and you mentioned Shingo Hyodo. Well, they must have heard us, or they must have been appalled, or they must have just thought that was the pinnacle of their career and it's not going to get better, because both players have retired in the past 10 days in a move that in some way has to be linked to our comments. So yeah, Shingo Hyodo announced his retirement after a few months with Sagamihara. I was really surprised to see the numbers. Hyodo played for Marinos for 8 years, 358 games and 45 goals in his time at the club. With the F Marinos English News, the fantastic F Marinos English News Twitter page, noting his important role in winning the Emperor's Cup in 2014. So yeah, Tony, I guess we'll come back to you for comment on that. Can I get your thoughts on Hyodo?
He was a great in the true sense of the word utility player. He was a midfielder. He could play both he would go both ways. He wasn't particularly flair. He wasn't flairish player at all. He just pretty well played a straight up and down kind of game. But he came up with some really important moments. I can remember one. I was looking at some highlights. I looked at the highlights last week with that Tomisawa long-range goal against Sanfrecce back in 2013, and I think one of our other goals in that game was a little 1-2 between Hyodo and between Nakamachi and Hyodo in the box with a back heel in there, and Hyodo got a nice goal there. He was just I think he was one of those players that just was a club, one of the your proper club men. He really just put in all his effort all the time. Couldn't really ever complain about him putting in a bad shift. So he went on to Sapporo after he left us, and then on to Sendai. It might have been the other way around before going back to Sagami Hara. So I mean, he's only 35, so I'm surprised he's not going to do a year or two in the JFL like Pans or Kobayashi was in at Shinjuku for a couple of seasons, but you never know, we might hear something about that. But congratulations to Hyodo on a good J-League career, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's much the same way with Tomisawa, Tony. I was surprised. I kind of went back and had a look at Hitch. I was going to mention that goal that you discussed there. That sort of unbelievable effort, but it doesn't feel like 10 years ago. And I was kind of surprised to go back and look that he only played 85 games in his 3.5 years with the club, because it felt like Tomisawa played a lot more than that for us. But yeah, it was just one of my favourite players overall, and a guy who really kind of had a good career, dropping further back as he progressed, and as you mentioned, kind of moving down through the leagues. He played at Tokyo Verde last season. I don't think he made too many appearances. I don't think I think he only made a handful actually, and he had, as far as I'm aware, quite a bad injury as well. But he's 39 and pressing on, and as I say, he was playing almost exclusively at central defence. I think when I came over to Japan for those famous 2 games against Kawasaki Frontale away and Tokyo Verde in 2019, when we went on to win the title, it was my hope to try and go and see Tomisawa play one last time for Sagamihara, and I couldn't make it to the game on this Sunday. And then, of course, within a few weeks, the whole world unravels and we've got no chance of travelling. So a regret of mine that I didn't get a chance to catch him playing one last time. But similar to Hyodo, it looks like he's had a great career, and I wish him all the best. And we might actually be covering Tomisawa again soon in another news story, because there are quite strong rumours linking him with a coaching role at the club. I don't know if anything's been formally announced, but it's looking as if he may try and get back involved if Marinos in some capacity. So, gents, unless there's any other news stories that you would like to cover, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up, or are we finished with the news this week after a busy one?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much finished. The only other news that's popping up a little bit is the COVID outbreaks at the training camp. Like I think twice there's been players that have come up, but I would say that that's nothing to worry about right now. I think people are getting mild cases, and it's not like a year ago where it was kindly putting the season in jeopardy for some clubs, like particularly like Gamba, where they had a really bad spell of it there. So I'm not too worried about that. So I think people are out. The other thing that came up that and this might be another kind of a prompt for a future episode, I think, is that the draw was held for the AFC Champions League, and we're drawn in Group H against Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors FC and also Hyung'an Haglia, which is, I'm told, is known as HAGL, the Vietnamese team, and then one more team that will be decided in the playoffs. So maybe sometime closer to those matches, we can find out a bit more about those teams and how they're doing.
Yes, absolutely, Tony. I think that's going to be Stuart. I think absolutely. I think what we do is we ring fence an episode for that. We preview it, and then we do what we always do, which is complain about the impact that it's having on the squad over the course of the season, because it undoubtedly, as Tony mentioned earlier, takes a huge burden on the squad. And can I ask just one question? I don't know if you know the answer to this, Stuart, but are the ACL games going to be played in one location again, or are we able to travel across the continent at this point? Because I'm thinking it might be nice for the squad to get a small break in Vietnam at some point in the next few months, if that is the case.
I believe they are going to be all played together like they were last time. But I checked the location of the Vietnamese team, and it's not one of the big cities. They're a big club. They've done very well in the past, but it's in the very centre of Vietnam. So I'd be very interested in going there under normal circumstances. That would have been a real adventure. So, but it's going to be tricky. I won't say maybe tricky to get there, but no, this time it's going to be. I believe it's going to be played all together like last time was.
Sorry, Tony, on you go, please.
The group stage is going to be held in the last 2 weeks of April, I believe. So I'm not sure at what location, but as you said, Stuart, it's the same sort of format as last time. So we'll have to wait and see how that impacts the J-League schedule as well.
Indeed, thank you guys. So I think we could leave it here for this week at this point. Hopefully next week is slightly less dramatic in terms of news as the players bed in and get ready for the new season starting. So we'll be back with a match preview of our opening fixture against Cerezo Osaka, and potentially maybe joined by one or two guests as well. But as always, thank you very much for listening, and thank you both guys for joining me this morning.
Yep, thank you, Jamie. Yep, and talk to you next time. Yep.
Yes, thanks, Jamie and Stuart, and thanks for anyone who's listening. Glad that we can at least pass on a little bit of something about Marinos for you.
Thanks very much, gents.
Okay, cheers.
Done.